Today, I'm going to teach you 5 ways to do terrifying things. Why? Why is that the topic? Because that's one of the few things every goal has in common. You will need to do some scary things. You'll have to step out of your comfort zone and do something that feels awkward, challenging, or maybe even terrifying. There's something you've been putting off in your own life right now. Maybe it's a difficult conversation. You're long overdue for a promotion at work, but you keep saying, I'll bring it up next month, or next month, and next month, and next month, and it just turns into a whole year you've been waiting for that conversation. Maybe you know you're supposed to start a business, but every time you think about charging somebody for something you do, like something you make or a service you offer, you freeze up. You feel fine donating your time, but that charging threshold feels impossible to break through. Maybe you know you're supposed to write a book, but you look at that blank page and it feels overwhelming. It's just this big, pale monster every time you sit down. We all have things we're afraid to do. I had to deal with one of mine very recently. I have a new book coming out about overthinking. It's called Soundtracks, and you can pre-order it in the description. There's a link right down there. Publishing a book has roughly 2 big parts. Number 1, writing the book, obviously. Number 2, selling the book. Each one is challenging, but I see so many authors get lost on the second part. They don't want to come off as too self-promotional, so they release a book and then they never talk about it. And I always tell them, well, the next time, don't release a book, write a diary. You never have to promote or pitch or sell a diary. You just write your thoughts down, put it on your nightstand, and then you have a sip of sleepy time extra strength tea before a long night's slumber. That tea is my jam, by the way. I long to attain that level of peace. Like the bear on the box looks so peaceful. But that's easier said than done, right? Especially if you're selling your book. Like if selling your book is one of your fears, it can be very terrifying. One of mine is asking people to endorse my book. Why is that so hard? Because it feels like the adult version of asking someone to the prom. Do you remember doing that when you were in high school? Was that fun? If you could do it 20 or 30 times, did you think, yay, now I get to do endorsements? Of course not. Only in this case, it's not the prom. You're asking someone to put their name on something that it took you years to create, something that despite every obstacle that mounts itself against publication, you wrestled to completion. 81% of Americans right now, American adults, according to the New York Times, want to write a book. 81%. You know how many do? 1%. Do you know why that gap is so big? It's massive, isn't it? I mean, it's such a big gap because there's so much fear there, but you did it. You finished your book. You finally got it done, and now you just have to ask semi-strangers or complete strangers to say that it's good. Now, don't let your identity get wrapped up in it. That's what they always say. Don't let your identity get wrapped up in it. Yeah, to quote the movie Taken, good luck. Despite your best efforts, your identity always gets a little involved. And you have to jump into this knowing that some people, they're going to say no. That's going to happen, and it should. I don't harbor any ill will to anyone who ever tells me no when it comes to endorsing my books. It does kind of hurt my feelings initially. Like I'm not a machine. I'm like, okay, whatever. It hurts my feelings initially, but the reality is there's a million reasons somebody might not endorse my book. I get over it because I understand it's part of the process. And I tell people no all the time, there are a million really good reasons people pass on endorsing your book. Sometimes they're just so slammed with their own stuff that they don't even have the time. Now you know that in your head, but it's challenging because fear lives in your heart and your belly. But if you believe in your book or your business or your whatever, and I believe in mine, you have to ask people to endorse it. You have to kind of grit your teeth and push on. It's roll up the sleeves time. So you do. Right now, there's something you're supposed to do too. You've known it for maybe a week, maybe a year, maybe even a decade. Let's pause right here for a second. What's the first thing that came to mind when I said, you know there's a thing you're supposed to do? If you're watching this and you have a piece of paper nearby, write it down. I dare you. Sit with that question for a second. You're supposed to do something, but you've been afraid. Maybe even terrified, if we can use a word that big. How do you do things that terrify you? Well, here are the 5 shortcuts I use. Number 1, turn the fear into a list. I can't act on a fear. A fear is too big and undefined and fuzzy and shapeless. I don't know how to approach it. But if I can take that seemingly massive blob of doubt and stress and anxiety and turn it into a list, I can actually see some actions in it. Fear fears action. It's terrified that you're going to take the next step and discover that the thing you've been avoiding is really not impossible. In the case of the endorsement request, I made a list of all the people I wanted to ask, from folks I knew would endorse it, friends that are in the industry, to impossible people like Yanni. Yeah, I said it, Yanni. If you still haven't listened to his Live at the Acropolis album, I feel sad for your ears. This is not shtick or sarcasm, by the way. This is a desperate plea from me to you to listen to the greatest album ever recorded. Step 1, make a list. Step 2, set a time frame. Fear always says forever. It says that thing you're afraid to do will take eternity. I say by the end of the week, I'll be done. Fear can't stand deadlines. It wants to remain untethered by any semblance of time, able to storm through your days and nights unabated. Forget that. Set some time frames for your actions. I want you to be really specific. I used 3 to help me with this particular task. I had a month-long deadline, meaning that I had to have the endorsements completely turned into the publisher within a month. Then I had a week-long deadline for myself, meaning that I gave myself a week to send them all out. And then I would set an hourly timer each day that I worked on it. So I boxed fear so tightly into my calendar that it didn't really know what to do. Number 3 step, tell someone. Fear hates being shared, because if you share it with someone, they can help you with it. Don't carry it all by yourself. You're not designed to shoulder every fear alone. I told multiple people, okay, dude, this is endorsement week. It's like Shark Week for writers. I was like, this is it. I put it out there. I did. It helped having some accountability and encouragement from my friends. Fear grows best in isolation. It's where danger grows too. Last year, I went to Rocky Mountain National Park. Nashville is 500 feet above sea level. Estes Park felt like I was so high I could touch the moon, like poke the moon in the face. While we were talking to our tour guide, he mentioned that every year they lose several hikers in the park. I asked him, what puts people at risk? And he said 2 things. Number 1, hiking alone. Number 2, hiking without telling anyone where you're going. It's one thing to hike alone. That's an act of solitude. It's another thing to not tell anyone where you're going. That's an act of isolation. I told my friend Ben that I was thinking about chickening out from asking one of my heroes, Laird Hamilton, for an endorsement. If you don't know Laird Hamilton, he's essentially the Michael Jordan of surfing. Like, he and Kelly Slater are the 2 greatest surfers in history in my mind. He was Kevin Costner's stunt double in the movie Waterworld. He helped pioneer paddleboarding and does scarier things before breakfast than I do all day. You might have heard of his wife too, Gabby Reese. She's the most famous female volleyball player of all time. So when it came to writing about overthinking, that's what my new book's about, and mindset, I knew Laird would have something to say. I mean, any guy who rides 70-foot waves that are traveling at 50 miles per hour knows all about the importance of getting your thoughts in order. I told my friend Ben, I want to ask Laird to endorse it, but I was going to give up. But then Ben got really excited and he challenged me. He said, I think you should do it. You've got to do it. And so you've got to do the same thing. You've got to tell someone. Number 4, ask, what's the worst that can happen? I used to hate when people would say things like, what's the worst that can happen? Someone says no, and I think, yeah, that is the worst that can happen. No is terrible. It's crushing. But that's really not true. The problem is that fear is a kaleidoscope. It's a magnifying glass. It's an exaggerator. Right now, with your goal, what's the worst that can happen if you actually do that thing you're afraid of? Write that down. I guarantee it's smaller than you think. Fear would tell me that the worst thing that could happen if I ask someone to endorse my book is that they say, no, I'm not going to. Not only am I not going to, it's a dumb book. You probably shouldn't even write books anymore. This is your 7th book. Oh my gosh. How have you been tricking so many publishers for all these years? And your hair is far too gray for your age. That's what fear tells me is going to happen when someone tells me no, but that's never the case. It's usually, hey, no, I'm too busy, but I wish you the best. I hope the project goes well. People who tell me no are always so nice. I can collect that L like a champ. You know that thing you're afraid of? It's not so scary, I promise. Number 5, the 5th way you do it is remember why you're doing it. Want to know why I pushed myself harder in those endorsements than I ever have before? Because I believe in this book. It's about overthinking, and I think after the year that we've all had, everyone on the planet needs this book. I believe in this book in my bones, and when I remember that, I'm more than willing to do things that make me feel uncomfortable and afraid. I spent 2 years writing and researching this book. I wasn't going to let a 10-minute task like asking Laird Hamilton for a book endorsement to derail it. When you have to do something that terrifies you, remember why you're doing it. Don't stare so long at the fear. that you lose sight of your vision. Ooh, that's the tweet. That's the tweet right there. It just went by us. Don't steer so long at your fear that you lose sight of your vision. Don't stare, stare, stare. Put that on a bumper sticker. Have you ever heard someone say, if it were easy, everyone would do it? That's true, sort of, because it is easy. Sending those endorsement requests was physically easy. I know how to send emails. I know how to write emails. I know how to respond to emails. All of that was easy. It's the fear that makes it hard. The thing you're doing, the thing you're afraid of doing is easier than you think. There's just fear in the way. All this fear. The next time you bump into it, do those 5 things. Number 1, turn it into a list. Number 2, set a time frame. Number 3, tell someone. Number 4, ask what's the worst that can happen. Number 5, remember why you're doing it. Okay, so that's the list. But what happened in my particular case, what happened with Laird Hamilton? Well, at 10:55 a.m. on September 16th, I wrote him a direct message on Instagram because I didn't have any other way to contact him. We weren't like surfing together on the weekends. Here's exactly what I said. If you're a writer, you should use this same formula. I said, Laird, I don't know if you ever endorse books, but I'd love to see if you're willing to take a quick look at mine. It's my 7th book, and past endorsers have included Seth Godin, Jim Gaffigan, Sophia Amoroso, and John Maxwell. It's about overthinking, and it's called Soundtracks. It's about how changing the soundtracks we listen to can turn overthinking from a super problem into a superpower. It's not a surfing book, but you've always struck me as someone who is really deliberate with how their thoughts impact their actions, so I thought you might dig it. This is a big if you're willing to take a look at it, could you send me an email or physical address depending on how you'd like to see the manuscript? Thank you for considering it, John. That was it. Short message on Instagram. 24 hours later, on September 17th, his wife, Gabby Reese, responded with an email address. I sent her the manuscript, and a few weeks later, Laird endorsed the book. Here's what he said. He said, your thoughts have power. I've spent decades on the water living by that principle. It's great to see Jon Acuff dive into the deep end about how important what we think really is with his new book, Soundtracks. Laird Hamilton, big wave surfer, innovator and co-founder of Laird Superfood. I called my friend Ben, who I talked to earlier, and he celebrated with me. We were both so excited. Now, some people said no. Some people didn't respond to my emails or my direct messages. That's okay. That's part of the process. But that's not going to stop me from doing scary things. And it shouldn't stop you either. Go do scary things. They're worth it. And so are you. Thanks for watching today. If you liked this video, this episode, if you will, please hit like, subscribe, and dare I say, this is a little bold of me, hit that bell so you don't miss the next one. Don't you want to know, like, oh, I was notified. John, there's that bell. There's that Jon Acuff bell. There's another episode up. There's another video. I hope you like that. I hope you like all the videos I do, and I can't wait to see your feedback in the comments. Thanks for watching.